This gospel is long like last week was, but I didn't see anything that I could leave out. But follow along closely and see that 6 different scenes that really are recorded here in the 9th chapter of John, beginning at the 1st verse. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or the parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while in the day, for the night is coming that no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground, made mud with saliva, and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before the beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how are your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it in my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind men, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said he was a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son who was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that now he sees, nor who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Then his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been born blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I've told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sin, and why are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found them, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You've seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. And Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, Surely we are not blind, are we? And Jesus said to them, If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say, we see, your sin remains. Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. Once again, we have a seemingly simple story coming to us, and all of a sudden it becomes very complex. It's a simple act of Jesus, and it should have resulted in an immediate reaction of praising God, and it falls into all kinds of subtle little things that are happening. As I said when we started reading this, there are 6 basic scenes in this rather lengthy gospel text this morning. The first is that Jesus sees a blind man. And immediately, instead of doing anything for the blind man, the apostles, the 12 apostles, those closest to Jesus, get into a theological argument on why he's blind. And they ask Jesus, why is this person born blind? Is it some sin that he committed, or is it some sin that his parents committed? Here's a man who has a need. He is probably a homeless person, probably struggling to eat, and he is born blind, and they have a mission. They've seen Jesus perform miracles before. And instead of reaching out and saying to Jesus, what can we do to help this man? They immediately get into a theological argument of why the man was born blind. Isn't that the way we operate sometimes? Instead of sitting down and helping someone, we get into a big discussion and argument about why we should, or why he is like he is. Why should we help him? He didn't help us. Why should we help him? He caused his own problems. That's a theological discussion. Well, Jesus then heals him. And the beggar goes out into his neighborhood. And all those people who probably ignored him, or the some who looked at him and said, oh, the poor thing, and just passed on, now got kind of gnarly about things. Instead of saying, man, this guy was blind and now he sees. Let's rejoice with him. Let's invite him in. Let's talk about some of the things about vision that can make his day better and his life better. Why don't receive him in? But when he comes, and they said, are you the one who was born blind? He said, yeah, I am. And they say, oh, no, you aren't. You must be somebody else. You're a fraud. You're a fake. You're a phony. They get on all kinds of arguments. I guess it was better for them to have him blind, because he presented no problems to them as a blind man. But now as somebody who had some kind of a miraculous healing, he becomes a problem. Isn't that the same way with us? Somebody has a miraculous conversion, and we laugh and we say, yeah, he gets converted all the time. Or, yeah, I guess we just have to wait around and see. Instead of clasping on to someone and helping them in a journey and saying, I rejoice with you because something exciting happened to you, we got to question all kinds of things about him. Next thing happens, the third scene in this text, he's hauled before the religious authorities. They've got a big problem with this because somebody healed you on the Sabbath. We surely know this guy was not of God if he healed you on today, because you aren't supposed to do any work today. And if you think that this person is somebody great, he's a snake oil salesman because he violated our laws. The fourth scene Now the religious authorities call in his parents. We got to have substantiation. This your son? Yeah, he's our son. Oh, was he blind? Or were you just kidding? Can you imagine that going to the parents of a blind child? No, this is our child. Well, then somebody really violated things and we need to deal with this because he healed him on the Sabbath. Who was it that healed him? And they said, he's of age, ask him. So back they go and they haul the man back in and try and find out more information about him. And the fellow asked an interesting question. Well, why are you so curious about this man? Do you also want to become his disciple? They say, well, don't be silly. Don't be crazy. We belong to the real faith. We aren't interested in this guy, but we'd like to deal with him because he's violated a law. Then, in the last scene, Jesus comes to him, probably coming up to him saying, you had a really bad day, didn't you, after your healing? And he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? And he said, who is it? He said, you're talking to him. And he believes. That's the simplicity of the story that should have been there before. But then Jesus talks about blindness, about spiritual blindness. And see, that's really the point. The Jews hear him talking. And the Jews say, is he saying that we're blind too? And that's the point. Yeah, that's what he was saying. So what do blind people do? Because before we come too critical of the religious elite, may we understand that sometimes we do the same thing. The people around the religious elite were blind to the spirit of the law and were interested only in the letter of the law. The third commandment was given to mankind as a gift. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. God rested on the Sabbath. It's good for man not to work all the time. Have a day of rest and have a day for rejoicing and a day for praising God. Simple as that. So what did the Pharisees, what did the Jews do? They created 632 laws about what to do and what not to do on the Sabbath. And then your religious commitment depends upon how well you obey all these 600 rules. Isn't that what we do? Instead of making something so simple, we put so many rules and laws about it that we cripple people's ability to relate to God or Jesus Christ. Jesus once again healed on the Sabbath day. He said, which of you farmers, you understand this? Your animal falls into a pit. Well, why wouldn't you pull it out on Sunday? Why would you wait till Monday? Because the animal needs help. Actually, it'd be the Sabbath, it'd be sixth or seventh day or Saturday in the Jewish law. We make all kinds of rules. And sometimes we misinterpret them and make it so they really drive people away rather than bring people in. What does it mean to be reverent when you come in the church? We have some people from the old regime that say when you come in the church you should be absolutely silent. Don't look right or left. Just be totally quiet and meditate. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But is real reverence, as far as coming into a fellowship of believers, is that better observed by quietness and sometimes ignoring people that come in, rather than welcoming in or welcoming each other as you come in as children of Christ? Maybe rejoicing isn't so bad. Yes, we have to have order. Yes, we have to show reverence in the church. But the sharing of love for each other supersedes rules. The spirit of the Sabbath was just to make Sabbath a day when people could worship and share in each other things that were important, and maybe rejoice at each other's successes and weep at their failures and cry at their deaths, not simply to be silent and ignore people who are strangers and just come in. The second aspect of spiritual blindness is the blindness divides people rather than brings them together. Oh, what a thing we've done with that. But it's easy to understand the Davidic law, isn't it? When people went into the temple to worship, they were to wash themselves. Why? Because they were clean? Like your parents told you, you're going to church in the morning, you've got to wash. Their washing was a ceremonial washing because God forbid they should come by somebody who was a Gentile and they were polluted. And when you went to church, you ceremonially washed so you could wash all the stuff off of somebody that really wasn't aligned with you at that time. And that was supposed to be something that brought people in? We've had turmoil in our synod in the last years, and we've had a group that split. And now our aristocracy says we cannot associate with them. I cannot preach to their congregations. I cannot aid them in their worship and religious experience. How crazy is that? How much like that is the Pharisees that tend to divide rather than unite? And to hear a delegate from the authorities saying it might be easy to get out of the synod, but it's going to be tough to get back. Is that the message of the prodigal son? It was an interesting little prayer that a girl made coming into Sunday school. She was quoting "Just as I Am," the song. Actually, she was singing the song, is what she did. She said, "Just as I am without one flea." Sometimes that's the way we try to portray ourselves. We don't have any fleas, we don't have any dirt on us, so let's keep the others out who might pollute us. I hope your religious ceremony does not include a bath because you've rubbed up against somebody who might be totally aligned with Jesus Christ. Even our cemeteries sometimes are divided, and we bury somebody outside the cemetery because they just didn't believe what we believed. Third aspect of spiritual blindness was we're concerned more about laws than we are and rituals than we are about people. The absolute greatest example I've seen of this is from Stan Moynihan, president of World Vision, who was interested in feeding the starving kids in Africa. And as he went, he solicits funds for people that are starving. He had a letter from one of the very, very righteous people, and he said this in his letter to Stan Moynihan, as far as contributing to the fund. And maybe it was just some way to get out of contributing to the fund, but this is what he said. All of us religious people know that a child is totally pure until they become of age, in which they can make some kind of commitment to God. So, therefore, if these children die before they reach an age of discernment, we know automatically that they go to heaven. And so maybe aren't we putting them at risk by helping to live to the point of the age of discernment when they might choose not to follow? And we use this as an excuse for not keeping children alive. Well, even we have some people who are joining our congregation this morning. One of the things that happens when they ask me, what does it take to join the church? I say, you've just done it. You make an application to join. How many classes do you have to take? Well, if you want to take a lot of classes, I'll give you 5 classes, 10, 40 years if you want. But you don't have to take a class to join. Our official policy is that when you are going to have new members, you get a certificate of transfer from another congregation. Okay, we'll try to do that if they're another Lutheran congregation. However, if they're not a Lutheran in background, we need to give them a series of courses before they can say whether they want to be Lutheran or not. Those are the rules. So, let's find some other way to keep people out of the church. I don't remember any place where somebody came to Jesus and said, what do I do to follow you? That he said, oh, you go back to the temple, find a rabbi, and take 12 courses and get a certification of achievement, and then you can come and follow me. He said, come follow. And you'll learn what we're about. And if you don't like what we're about, you'll leave. But maybe you'll find something that is worthwhile because we believe in Jesus and we want you there for any reason whatsoever. There was a little incident in our midweek Lenten service that I thought was really great. And I'm sorry I didn't talk to the person who responded this way to make sure it was all right. But I'm sure it is, because he's a good fellow. But I was congratulating the group on the number of people that were there for the midweek Lenten service. And the one response was, we're here for the chicken. I know he was kidding. However, that is so beautiful because it doesn't matter why you're here or why you're joining. You're here and you're listening to the Word. And that Word can only take root when you're here and listening. We make up so many rules about what we need to do. And Jesus said, just come and follow me. It was a simple story of a healing that took place, and that there should be joy in the fact that that healing took place. But there was too much spiritual blindness. And this morning I will ask you to do away with your spiritual blindness, if there is any. Don't be blind to the spirit of the law and only concerned about the letter of the law. Tend to unite people rather than divide them. That's what the real message of Christ is all about. Be concerned more with the love of people than ritual and laws. And with that, your spiritual blindness will disappear. Amen.